ignorance, I'd rather call the best specialist this country has in this field, and that's Dr. Ramesh Mishra. He will take us through the nitty-gritties of this whole area and what techniques are used. He's a leading authority in this field, and he has several years of experience, especially in this area. He heads up the Center for Cognitive and Neural Sciences in Hyderabad. So we're very pleased, sir, that you've traveled all the way from Hyderabad only to come and address us. So thank you so much.
Cognitive science obviously is the study of cognition, not pertaining to humans specifically, but cognition as an entity. And cognition is to cognize, to understand the world around the environment around you and display intelligent behavior. That's the textbook definition of cognition. And who has cognition is another big philosophical question. And cognitive scientists are pretty interested in understanding how we display intelligent behavior and what we can do with it and how you can enhance it rather, because that's where the whole interest now lies. And a lot of posters that I just saw, students, and they were all about like social media is bringing our working memory down and literacy down. See, there is a feeling, growing feeling that all this is gimmick is fine, but we are losing something essential. So what you are losing is basically that sense of your private sense of your own brain's worth, cognition. So you are feeling the tampering, and that's why most posters were basically saying that too much of it is bad. But are there people that can do all that and get away with and be smarter? And we are addressing some of these questions. So in the labs, it cannot be more generalized, because like diversity, human mental potential differs, and there are biological, psychological, contextual, evolutionary, societal regions. So I won't get into all of that. But now coming to the topic, when I saw first neuromarketing, I know what broadly comes under it. Probably it has been used as some kind of possibility where you, as madam just told, how you can attract somebody's attention, unconscious attention, help them. So cognition is central. The enhancement of it is central, because I think marketing, what is it, like selling something to someone or trying to communicate, they all deal with interpersonal cognition. Communication is also interpersonal cognition. So if we try to understand more about cognition using modern methods, then probably it would be helpful. And that's where I would take the talk. I would talk a little bit about the eye tracking, because this is what I have used for my own research. And it appears that it is already been taken up by people who are in the companies and other corporations, and they understand its need. But I would give you a more research view. Although I understand the applications, the applied possibilities of it, so that you can connect. The other thing that I thought when I was looking into the topics and the description of what can be done, I think there is a feeling in India, because it's a growing market, and we are competing with countries like China and other countries, and there is somewhere a growing sense that researchers, what can they do in this growth? Can they just be in the labs and be happy about the little research, or can they be useful in the country's overall? Can we sell something that we make? Like I heard that China is making a passenger jet, and if China starts selling passenger jets to India, the game is upside down. So we need to also be connecting to this national ethos, which is dynamically changing. As a cognitive scientist, it's an open field, because I am not just narrowly addressing something about the brain or mind, but it has societal relevance, how education can be improved, how more ethical behavior can be established, how brain disorders can be cured. So many of you already may be knowing eye tracking is basically a device that you use to track eye movements, and eye movements are pretty natural to us, like say, finger movements, but eye movements are very fast, and eye movements are window to cognition. That's a metaphorical phrase. Like if you measure somebody's eye movements, how long they are staying on something or they are not staying, they can give you some clues about the person's unconscious nature of processing. So that is where the interest lies. That can I learn something about the mental processes of somebody by just measuring eye movements? And advertising and marketing is a visual game. You don't survive without without being very presented visually in a very strong manner. You can see companies spending millions of dollars to enhance the visibility. What one understands by that? It's all for the viewers. So if you are not able to attract the viewers' very brief attention, and attention is the most scarce commodity now, anybody would agree, and there is stiff competition to attract the little attention that you may have. So we need to understand a couple of things. First of all, do people really see? I mean, you are putting an advertisement. I see a lot of hoardings. I have some funny hoardings here that I kind of clicked when I was coming from the airport. I mean, they are all crying out for my attention. And you are in the traffic, and it actually should be helpful to them because traffic in Bangalore allows you to be struck for 25 minutes, but there is a big hoarding there. But am I really sensitive? That's the kind of question, because he has put all that money and effort to make me attract my attention. But has he really invested the time and energy to decorate that, or to come up with the kind of stuff that would be interesting enough for me to really go after it? That's the key question, and that is where I would like to connect the talk. So eye movements are very, very important motoric behavior that tell us a lot about cognition, about vision, and about perception, about memory, decision making, all kinds of things. So this is an emerging, this is not just a technique, but I would say it's an emerging discipline. The discipline is known as visual cognition. As the name suggests, visual cognition is trying to understand cognition through visual modality. Because about 80% of what we experience, probably, or 75% comes through visual input. So it's very, very essential to understand how visual perception works and its impact on decision making, on cognition, on all kinds of things. So we basically use eye tracking to capture somebody's dynamic shifts in attention, because that's important. And most people actually see, you find them seeing, but they're not actually cognizing. There is a difference. So eye tracking can tell you when he's cognizing as opposed to just browsing, moving up. So when you find somebody cognizing, you have hooked him. Business is done. Likely he will be following you. So cognizing can be tracked through measurements of distinct patterns of eye movement. So there are more issues with it. It's not and cognition, like all of us are here, we are kind of, you're tuned into me and I'm speaking to all of you. We have a stable collective mental state now. Any kind of fluctuation would disturb us. And it's continuous. The beauty of it is, though we measure cognition discretely, but cognition is continuous. It is, I would say, it is so continuous that it happens even when you are sleeping. Well, I'm not connecting it to Freudian analysis of dream, but cognition is not discrete, like I am cognizing now, I'm not cognizing now. What you can consider, the cognition that are conscious to you, you are proud of them, you are objective about them. The cognitions that you are not conscious of, you disregard as if nothing was happening. But when we look at your brain, it's active, and there are activities and etc. is happening. So cognition sometimes are specific, sometimes non-specific. So eye tracking can tell you about both types of things. When actually he is intentionally cognizing something to do something with it, and when he is just passive and he's not interested. So you can find it out. It can be a very, very good cue. There are many simple technical things about it. So we use that kind of an equipment that we have in the lab, and this is particularly important in marketing research. If you have a lab attached and a couple of PhD students who are master students, it's very useful for you to ground your hypothesis. What exactly you are achieving by a piece of advertisement before you push it. I mean, that is creativity cells, but how can you be sure that this is the one that would click? Because we don't have unlimited patience. Like you go and try out 50, 100, people will think that okay, he doesn't know anything. So you have to be sure to get some empirical data. That's why this kind of a machine would be very useful. So there are some various types of it. You can put it on the head, and you can ask somebody to, like in this machine, it's very high sampling rate. So it kind of records like possible 2000 2000 samples in the one second, and it's really, but you don't need that kind of sampling rate, because we use for research, like understanding how perception works, or microseconds, the very minor fluctuations that keep happening all the time, although we experience the world stably and holistically. So you use an eye tracker depending on what you want to achieve with it. Now, the study of eye movements and its importance to cognition started about a couple of decades ago, and it was an interesting study to begin with. As the picture shows, it's an art. It shows some people in a room, and different people are doing different things. Now we don't look at everything, is not it? Because we cannot. Because the outside world is full of stimuli that is not useful to us. So how your brain decides what to look for is another question. But your eyes are taking you, most likely that is of interest to you. Now the experimenter here manipulated questions. First question was, what would be the age of different people that are here? The second question was, are these people poor or rich? The third question was, are these people talking to one another, or they are just... So these kind of questions evoked different kinds of eye movements. This established that eye movements are under top-down control system. Like you don't just look just for the sake of looking, but you are trying to find out something, and it can be manipulated. And that the record of that can be further informative in telling you this person's signature style of looking, because it's kind of a biosignal. So today there are devices that can use your own eye movements to get you something back. Like you can use just your eyes to move stuff on a smartphone. I saw some in Europe, and it's all going there. So it's a very strong signal. So visual cognition is changeable, and it is totally under top-down control. And many times we can be unaware of it, because in my experiments I see people, I show them a picture and I ask them, well, just see, and after some time I ask, did you see there? And he has not seen, and it says, no, I have seen, and where he has seen, he has no memory. So there is a likelihood of false memory induction in our casual seeing. So therefore, don't trust people if say, okay, I am evaluating, I am seeing. Actually, his cognitive seeing is not happening, because cognitive seeing is extremely goal dependent. So you want to capture that part of it. That's tiny, just like a couple of milliseconds. And if that can be enhanced, you are going to do anything with him, because he is not going to give you that. Why would he give you that? Because that part of the decision is taken in a very tedious manner in the brain. Multiple areas are involved. Am I really interested in going after and seeing this or not? So eye movements are of many types. So I would fundamentally say that eye movement recording is nothing actually. You don't tell me that he was looking there, he was looking there. That's nothing. That's meaningless. You have to tell me here when he was looking, he ended up doing that immediately after that. So when you have that kind of an information, it's like you're browsing a website and you are acting on some of the tabs, or you are deciding not to act. So you are taking a decision. So eye movements that are eventually linked to decisions are those kinds of eye movements that I was referring to, and there are very few. So there is a wide possibility to study different types of looking behavior. The same machine will give you all this kind of data, but you need to know a little bit about analysis and statistics and how to mine the data basically, but that's possible. So I have put some slides. Basically, these kind of things are happening now in neuromarketing research. People are given wearable devices and they're asked to just browse, because it's a big deal. Companies, they want to, all competing companies, they want their products to be sold. But what is achieved here? What is achieved here is you get some data. Okay, if you keep a product in the top shelf and here and there are a good number of looks, and that's useful data. So the eye tracking equipment is it's day by day they are being innovated and wearable and very light and high sampling rate and those kind of things. So you basically can use it to allow free recording of data in somebody's natural state. Somebody should not be in the lab, and that That's a good development. When people choose stuff and when they finally choose stuff, that there is a difference. Browsing, window shopping, and finally buying something. And people can take decisions in minutes. It's not necessary that everybody takes decision after a careful survey. I have seen people buying a BMW car in a couple of minutes, deciding which one to go for, and people going around test driving and not buying a car at all. So you can never be sure. Can cognitive science help to minimize your time that you are in marketing or you are in business and you really can't have all that? You need some basic core information. So I think we can tell you something. So you have research on websites, and this is a big area of research. I have not come across many websites, I'm telling you, that are really worth looking at. Because they're so tedious and they engage you so much. You don't want that involvement because you have no time. So you need to have a website that really not just hooks you with bottom-up features like color and usability and all that, but it instantly captures your attention and you are getting involved with it. So there are few websites. I mean, you talk of university websites, you talk of banking websites, you talk of Make My Trip. There are issues with many of them. But then systematically, if we study, can we arrive at certain points that anybody should use to design a website? So that's where the research is moving now. And then a lot of stuff in advertising is just not pictures but a lot of text, right? And I often wonder, in India, illiteracy is rampant. 30-40% people don't know how to read. So what kind of an advertisement you want to make for Indians when you really want to sell to most people? Because they are not able to read. And that's one point. We have to keep literacy and socioeconomic issues and attitudes and what you can put in a village and what you can put in Mumbai and those kind of things. So these are necessary, but that's advertising thing. I am just talking about its impact on somebody's cognition, because that's what you are trying to hook. And once that person understands it, that person wants to buy it. So text-based advertising, because text processing takes time, even for the best of the readers, because it demands selective attention. Some more refueling, because selective attention operates like this. What you can call it, like pips. It's not like constant. It's serious stuff. So when selective attention is not getting used for which you are trying, you are not able to really do a bargain. And people, you can observe that people in airports are big shopping. India has become now, you have duty free even for domestic passengers, and you can buy something. But how many people are really buying stuff that they wanted to sell because lack of selective attention? And frankly speaking, I also have not found a good amount of education in the sales personnel, because they have just been told that just talk about the products when that's not, and stand there and talk about the products. I think that is equally important. I'm not into that, but that probably is the concern of some of you. I am talking about how to use that little bit of time when somebody gauges on that product and you are standing there. Can you exploit that moment? And if you are not able to sell now, can you induce in him an understanding that he comes back and buys? That's the point. And I think eye tracking data, if done real life, pilot kind of data with new products, I would be interested, but I cannot do myself because I do basic research with vision. But I think it is possible to really know, depending on the social class, depending on education, depending on other interests, and depending on the product, how many competitive products are there. There is all kinds of things, like too much of crowding. Like when you go to a perfume shop, there are like millions of different types of the same product. The semantic load is so much, and then it is multimodal. He's giving you to sniff, also one after the other. The coffee beans is not going to help you because he's loading you with so much of information that you really lose patience, and you start thinking, no, what I was thinking, 50 ml or 100 ml. Your decision comes to your experience. What is happening in the present is nonsense. So you are banking on your past to make a decision. But I said that cognition is dynamic. Are you exploiting my current cognition, or are you exploiting my past cognition? So I think it should be understood very clearly. So if you load too much and unnecessarily, you are basically extracting his selective attention for something that is not necessary, and because once he has lost that resource and you again demand that resource for a decision making, are you buying or not, then it is problematic. Because decision-making research also shows selective attention is necessary. So it all comes down to encasing of attention in a very dynamic world. And there are books written with this kind of theme, the social nature of attention. So it's all attention. Attention is studied by almost all cognitive scientists. It's the main thing to study. If we understand its nature, if we understand how to exploit it. I mean, I'm using language that is that of a marketeer, but I'm saying that's what you want to exploit that. So eye tracking can tell you something or other. E-commerce today entirely rests on exploiting your selective attention with the brief amount of time you have, and then to sell something. And there are more interesting facets. For example, of the products that are not reviewed, and there are psychological elements. So people do not see and they go by, and when you want something, then hundreds of hits products come and they are not arranged properly. So I think the understanding of attention and its minimality is weak. When you understand that, you would be probably more careful about putting stuff, knowing fully well the limitations of people. Because if you don't understand that, and it's not helping you, because people are not really buying them. Important area within this research field called usability research has been where people look, mostly websites. And these days I think most websites have improved in terms of functionality, but I would not say they are yet there that really allow you to do whatever you want to do. They put some hindrances and you click there are many kinds of tricks. You have to go down, scroll, whether you read or you don't read, just find where I agree is there, then something comes. So there are all kinds of issues with display of visual information that actually does not help us to do what we want to do. Eye tracking involvement in consumer behavior research is very high now. In India, it is growing. In the West, it is very standard. I did a small study, like I asked my research assistant, my students, okay, I am fascinated by this kind of decision making with real costly products. And colors of cars is a big deal. Somebody told me white cars, they cost less. I didn't know. But the other rationale in India, white cars are more official and it indicates this and that, piousness maybe. But the reason is that they cost less. I don't know whether you agree, and many car companies today actually do not come up with all variations of all cars. So I wanted to know, asking a student, it's an eye tracking data, okay, these 4 pictures, the same car I think. I told, okay, I give you now say 10 lakh rupees. Within 10 minutes you have to take a decision which car will you buy. Question was color. So the eye movement saw that it was equally divided, because 10 minutes was not sufficient. She was basically staying here and then going and staying there, and where was she looking with regard to the color? Maybe in the frontal. So because it's a 2-dimensional picture, you have no, but in real life you can move around and do something. So there is no big preference. But if you do a pre-questionnaire, qualitatively you ask people before they get into a company, before they try interacting with the cells, then you know something about the color preference, and you probably can have some kind of a leverage, because many colors are not stored. You want a black car, metallic black, the dealer will say that we don't have it, I will take 2 months to order. You want a white and a cream, I can give you today. So there are issues with basic things like color. And color is a very cognitive thing. There are studies that show cultural variations in color perception and aesthetics. There are studies that have shown as you age, your sensitivity to certain colors, they go. So there are many kinds of facts, and eye tracking can also tell whether subtle differences in color shades are useful and important. This knowledge has come from visual cognition research. So, and the body part, whether the same color should also appear somewhere inside the car or just outside the car. So I would say, depending on the experience, depending on the profile, depending on your ideas, what you have, you are going to look very intensely, and you are not going to look a lot. There lies the difference between novices and experts. So eye tracking data can tell you, this is just a sample, but I can do a very large study and come up with a difference. Novices and experts do not look alike. This is the foundational understanding. So the question for you is, are you trying to exploit the novices looking or the experts looking? How do you know that he's an expert? Because verbal behavior people mask. You don't, when a person is in airport, you want to sell perfume, you don't ask how many times you have used, or if you can offend him. So you are depending on what kind of cues. Primarily you are depending on what kind of cues. You have no idea about him. Because if you treat him like a novice, he will catch and he will start lecturing. So it can go wrong in many ways. All I want to say is that there has to be a marriage between organizational psychology and cognitive psychology. That marriage is missing. And that is why a lot of undesirable things you see. Bad advertising, bad public dealing, the salesperson is not able to answer standing with an object, and then the person feels that, okay, I don't get good information, so why should I buy? So anything is going, it's not optimal. So I would say in a collaborative project, when you are trying to sell something to someone, it's collaborative cognition. It should arise from very good give and take of information and the object. That becomes the primary, then you start talking about the object. So I think you can do some studies, and these are happening, not much here, but in Europe. Particularly these brands are very conscious. Where would they place their product? What would be next to it? Because cognitive psychology tells us that similarity-based interference. So if there are two products of two companies that are competing, I finally may not buy anything. So, and if there are products that are very different, that also induces a problem. So this is a real challenging question, and we can have some answers to that. The other point that I thought, I keep seeing this a lot, I mean there is no gender issue here, but let's take advertising for very costly things like jewelry or some other kinds of stuff. And this is very culture specific. Let me tell you, visual cognition is so highly culture specific. Chinese and Indians and Ethiopians and Americans and Germans, they are not aesthetically appreciating the same thing similarly. You talk of globalization, you talk of world trade, but let me tell you, you can only sell if you are hooking to the aesthetics that he has been brought up with. And this even has been tested with so-called immigrants to America that have stayed 25 years there, their aesthetics have not changed. Their aesthetics have not changed. So they will not really behave like actual white Americans would behave, or like African Americans would behave. So in such kind of examples, what exactly one is trying to achieve? So many a times, I will not speak from the point of view of an advertiser, because obviously an advertiser is a creative personality and has put some thought, and there are definite ideas in the field. But if I do eye tracking on it, and if I give really people money, you have 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh, you can buy really one of these products, and let's see, where are they looking? Are they really looking at the jewelry? Are they looking at the face in connection to the jewelry? Are they looking at other things that are there? I mean, it's the kind of question. Are you cluttering it by putting a film star, or could it be done with a non-film star or some unknown personality? Because that is a growing trend in European advertising. I saw that they don't use stars anymore. They use ordinary people. Of course, this has to do with opening up of many things. I would say that is some kind of stereotyping, and only your film stars have to tell you, okay, this product is good. But I think it is a disappear. Find something effective. This is a matter of visual cognition, and we can do experiments. I came across these two things in the morning. You find this everywhere. I mean, they're crying out for attention. You have to understand, whoever has created it, with understanding what he wants to say, they're not really talking about happy birthday bhaiya. They are trying advertising themselves. And there are 20 of them, and it can be bigger. It can be really like 30 people here. So they are basically telling the viewer, you look at each one of them, and we could be the next MLA. All that is fine. But do I have the patience or the visual cognition to look at 20 heads? I mean, nothing with any political party. I am just talking from the point of view of visual cognition's demands. You are trying to grab somebody's attention who is waiting in traffic, but are you doing it in that way that he really, and look at the conflict. Why some unknown people would celebrate openly in public somebody's birthday? I mean, as a common man, this comes to me as a question. Why would it? So the intentionality, because I as a viewer, I'm intentionalizing, okay, why these people are there? And so it is all happening around us, and it can also be, I'm not saying you minimize them. I mean, they would find out my number and call me. All I'm trying to say is that there is a need to understand the economic aspects of attention, because after all you are putting it in public, you want people to see, you want people to understand, you want to convey something. And visual cognition, I am saying, is so limited in its energy that you can't really clutter it. So it is a good example of cluttering basically. And it's not clear about the intention, because any kind of visual message has intention attached to it. Why am I seeing it? Because the intention here, as I told you, there is a hierarchy. They are not in the same hierarchy. There is a hierarchy. We understand that in India very well, but an European American don't understand what's going on in this advertisement. I have tried this out with some people, my friends, when they come. What is this happening here? All this is exploitation of visual cognition, but I want to use them as examples that are not really good, because they are not doing the job properly. That's the point. And it doesn't really matter how many years you put that in that corner, because it's a matter of moment. So visual cognition has to be exploited. So I want to say that the kind of anomalies that people have put in, they actually cost them rather than help them. But I think there is this anomaly that the advertiser is unaware of. So therefore, visual cognitive scientists, advertising people, creative people, at times they should sit down together. There should be more joint conferences, workshops. So this kind of issues can be brought up. I mean, you may have a counter argument, this is my way of understanding it, but I am not an advertising person. I'm just looking at it from the point of view of economy of attention or visual cognition. Then there are practical areas really. I mean, as a hiring company, I have little time and I really have to read a lot. And how do people are packing their stuff? And eye tracking data suggests that people actually look a little bit on the top and then somewhere and then they go away. So they really read none of it. And this is unbiased data. It is not like because of constraint of paying selective attention. This just can't be the case that everybody writes, I want to be great in my life, and he's reading that. No, he is not just reading that, because you have read it when you wrote. He has no patience. So how do you create a resume or something that really hooks him so that he starts looking at it? It's a matter of font, it's a matter of content, it's a matter of placing, it's a matter of all kinds of things, and it has been demonstrated. So eye tracking can be useful. And now coming to the most latest involvement of eye tracking in assistance, because by just looking you can operate a computer, and this is very helpful for people with disability, particularly what we call cognitive motoric disability. If this can happen, then eye movements can be as helpful as any motor response. Like you can command a computer and it happens actually. And I think it is in other forums I know it is coming up, and there may be some companies in India or startups that are working towards it. So they are also disappearing, because eye tracking, I'm telling you, the equipment unnecessarily costs a lot. 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs. There should be some Indian companies manufacturing research grade eye trackers. It cannot be 40, 50 lakhs. And that's what they were trying to do. And then it so happened that the big fish, they purchased them in the saying that we will use it in our mobile devices. SMI is a very famous German company, and SRI Link. So they're like world standards, but there should be some Indian initiative, particularly our engineers and others. It's big money there, because we're a big country. We need an eye tracker everywhere. So you really can. So I think I offered you a some passionate and some more scientific overview, and the message that I was trying to to suggest that you should remain sensitive to progress in science, but at the same time you must also know how can you use that, because information that is coming from human brain research and from cognitive science, from neuroscience is really helpful in cutting down a lot of these distractions. So attention is very limited, and you really can't waste attention of the person in front of you, and you really want to sell something. Or I don't know whether I was right or wrong, but I was positing it from a marketing point of view because of the name of the workshop. So although neuromarketing as it is understood in the advertising business community is a bit different, I do not want to talk about that. I was trying to suggest an attentional visual cognitive kind of a model that can be helpful in designing something. And it is a practical thing. Among some alternatives, which one would you go for? And there lies the business potential also. But let me say one thing. Cognitive potentials are also changing or they're adapting. So I can't be compared or you can't be compared to somebody who was there 200 years ago. Because the world was different, the contextual demands were different. The cognitive evolution is also happening, a bit slowly, and we don't know how to track it. Demands grow as new demands on your cognition is created, your brain kind of adapts. But then the problem is who has the ability to adapt faster as compared to somebody else. That is individual difference. So we also need to know a little bit about individual difference, because whether eye movements or whether cognition, they are individual specific and they are not to be put in a bracket. So I would not say that everybody suffers from social media use or everybody comprehends the same advertising similarly. So there lies the necessity for empirical data, and I didn't talk about brain imaging data, although I keep doing some fMRI work. But eye tracking or any behavioral data or virtual reality now has come into our field, and we do a lot of work. Please visit our website. So I think you can have a look, and if you would be interested in some way, if you want just to come in and have a visit, see what we do with EEG or eye tracking, and you can experience that, and that may help you to further link up whatever I have said. So finally, the bottom line is the scientific study of visual cognition is pretty important in understanding human behavior as it is found in more dynamic situations where money is involved. Has advertising, the exploitation of visual cognition played any role in making them who they are today? Because everybody is trying to grow a brand. What role visual cognition, sensitivity, aesthetics play in those kind of decision making is the question. Because they need to grow. So with this, I would sum it up, and I hope that I was comprehensible and you understood me, and something that I was saying was useful. The lab web page is pretty informative, and lots of research papers we have put in there. You can just try to contact. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the other remaining speakers, and thank you again for the invitation.